Good evening again, everyone, on my behalf as well. My name is Dijana Jelača, and I'm the Programming Director of the Bosnian-Herzegovinian Film Festival. We're extremely proud of this particular screening block. Three young women filmmakers making incredibly raw, inventive, original, and probing documentaries, exploring really the limits of documentary filmmaking when it comes to personal stories, personal histories, women's narratives, disability, trauma, and memory. And we are incredibly proud that Smirna Kulenović, the director of the film that we saw last, Our Family Garden, is here. I'm actually going to read a little short biography of hers before I invite her to the stage and we will have a conversation. So Smirna is a transdisciplinary media artist, researcher, filmmaker, and lecturer based in Vienna, Austria. She received a master's degree from the Department of Interface Cultures at the University of Arts and Design, Linz. Her practice focuses on transdisciplinary performance, art, science, participatory, and public art as methods of addressing cultural, personal, and environmental embodiments of identity and memory in post-crisis societies, something that I think we clearly saw evident in this film. In her work, she continuously collaborates with Arts Electronica Center as well. She currently works as a lecturer for interactive performance art for the MA students of Interface Cultures at Kunstuniversität Linz, as well as for the MA students at the Dance Institute at Anton Bruckner Private University. At the moment, she's working on a large-scale transdisciplinary art project for the European Capital of Culture. She has shown works, performed and taught courses for artists internationally from the Yale School of Architecture, Royal Institute Arts Stockholm, Courtauld Institute of Arts London, Care of Milan, and a number of other schools, including the Contemporary Museum of Contemporary Art in Zagreb, the History Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It is our absolute pleasure to invite Smirna to the stage.
Mi smo majke, mi smo sestre I mi smo iscijeliteljke. Ovo što se danas ovdje desilo, to nije samo puki performans. To je zaista bilo jedno iscijeljenje.
Raskopavanjem ovih rovova raskopavamo istoriju, da sađenjem tih nevena osjećam se kao da sadimo neku novu istoriju.
First thing I'm going to do is make a little round so we can actually face each other as we face the audience as well. Welcome, Smirna.
Thank you.
Great to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Excellent. So I just read your short bio. Already a list of incredible accomplishments. Filmmaker is not the first and foremost. You're a transdisciplinary artist. Tell us a little bit, before we get into the details of the film, where does film specifically fit into your work? How do you see film fitting into your broader project and art?
Yes, thank you. So as you said, my primary concern is not just about film as a visual form, but more as a research method within a broader practice that within which I work with public art and participative performances, and I use film just as one of the strategies to examine memory, identity, and history. And another thing I want to say is that this particular film was not imagined as a film when we just started. We actually just did the performance and created like a documentation that was supposed to be for gallery purposes. And later the story became so overwhelming that I really felt the urgency to document it as a film. So this is why maybe formally it's not something that I would do again if I would plan it in advance, but I'm very happy that it happened.
This is when I first encountered the film, when it came our way. I don't know what the static is behind us. Hopefully it's not our hair doing anything. I was thinking about this. Clearly, it started out as this organic project, an organic monument, which we will get back to. At which point did you start thinking about it in terms of making a film about it, and what form that film may take? Will it be a straightforward documentary, somewhat experimental documentary, and how do you approach the participants of this really participatory organic monument that you're creating, and talk to them about participation with the camera present and talking to someone behind the camera, you or other people, and being filmed, really?
Yeah, that was all like a completely organic, spontaneous process. So when I thought about making a film, the first thing that I knew is that it's not going to be an experimental film, because there's so many like personal lives and histories and emotions of like hundreds of participants involved, and from some kind of like personal relationship that I've created with them through the work, I realized that they really need their story to be told in the most possible straightforward way, where we can show this to any audience and people would still understand and resonate with the topic. Of course, from my maybe personal, artistic, experimental side, I would still love to extend it time-wise and do a lot more, but our constraints were also that we collaborated with a production that was like a TV production, so we had to fit in the story within this 45 minutes. That was also another important aspect. So regarding the participants, it was actually very easy. I did not expect that they would react so well to the camera, even though it was like so emotional after the performance, especially like the first time we recorded these 100 women in red. We asked them like straight after the performance to stand in front of the camera if they feel the urgency to share something. So all the women that we see, they were the ones that chose to come by themselves, and they felt like they really had to say something to the camera. And most of them like continued. Now it's the third year of the project, and most of them are really happy now that they participated in the film. And I must say that also like directing process was not just mine, because in my work I always do a more like collaborative approach. So during the directing and editing, I was always consulting the women, like coming, doing workshops with them, showing them the footage, asking them if they feel represented in a correct way, and if I'm style-wise like also able to tell their stories in the most correct way. I think this was something that was a primary goal.
And you talk about participants feeling comfortable or wanting to make them feel comfortable. We also see at least one incredible moment. I'm thinking of the young woman who is talking about her family and her family trauma and the loss of her brother. And her voice just, she clearly can't, it's too emotional of a moment. And you kept that in the film. She clearly signaled that she is not going to go any further. And it's such an incredibly powerful moment, because it also is a testament to the power of the parts that are not said, that are there, but we don't have to elaborate on them. We can completely understand. No further words needed. Were there any other examples of that? Any other kind of raw moments happening that didn't necessarily make the cut? And what was going on between the participants who come from the region, and not just former Yugoslavia, women from other countries as well? Tell us about that kind of shared experience.
Yes, thank you for asking this question. It was actually one of the moments that I really insisted on staying within the film, because there were many other moments like that. but still within this TV constraints, it was very hard to push through as a format. But yeah, this was extremely important also outside of the film, like the participants who came together for this day, most of them like did not even know each other before, especially people who traveled so far to come to Bosnia for this. And still today they're sending me photos on Facebook like, hey, we're hanging out, because they became friends, a lot of them afterwards. And also a lot of them actually go to the location and they do picnics with their families. So they also regularly send me videos of their children playing in the war trenches or coming there just to put some other plant. Like they're starting to use it as if it was their garden as well. So this is why also this our family garden, because yeah, the family is somehow extended to the society.
It's not just nuclear family, even though it starts with your family, the female line specifically, even though you have your grandfather
yes.
in the beginning and his story. But how did it come about? How did the participants learn about this project and come to? Was this something that was also organic or organized?
Organic reach on Facebook. It was like
What happened?
Well, it actually, there's another whole part that did not make it in the movie, because how this whole project started was I was sitting on a coffee with my grandma and my mom, and I told them, okay, so can you wear something red? And now we're going to go to the war trenches. They're like, what? And then they actually listened to me because I persuaded them very well. And we went to the trenches. It was February, so it was like 6 months before the whole performance. And I asked them to start digging the trenches with me just to see how they would feel. And then I put like a red lipstick on my grandma and she was like, what are you doing? And then I did like a little photo shoot. It's actually the film poster is from this day that we went to the trenches. So it was just me, my mom and my grandma. And I wanted to make a photograph that would somehow represent this idea for the future. And we ended up doing that photograph, which is on the poster. And I came home and I just posted it on Facebook on my personal profile, like publicly. And I wrote, hey, I'm looking for 100 women who want to join. And then I did not expect absolutely anything. And like in the next 2 days, there were 600 messages. It was like everybody wanted to take part. And this made me feel like this is something that most of these people were waiting for to happen for so many years. Like this moment where we unite together and empower each other as women. But we are always like, we keep on being represented in the media as these poor Bosnian women crying in the back and so on. So everybody is really sick of that. And I think the women that responded were like, okay, yes, you know, let's do this. Mm-hmm. And then I had to say even no to some because I was like, oh my God, 600 women in the performance. I don't know. It was already scary. Like we had many things also, like the Society of Archaeology suddenly told me, oh, this is like a Neolithic finding area and nobody cares about it, but you should not dig there. And then they told me it's a landmine field. And then they told me there's goats eating stuff there. And so it was, yeah, a lot of stuff to process.
A lot of factors to take in. But what an incredible idea and project to literally co-opt this landscape of trauma that has stayed and clearly been sort of the topography that has a lot of bad memories for a lot of people for understandable reasons, and through women's work specifically, make it a site of regeneration, regrowth. Was it immediately clear for you from the beginning that you were going to focus this as women's work specifically, or how did that come about?
Thank you. Yeah, I love this question in Sweden and Denmark when I go there, and then they're like so gender and politically correct, and they're like 300 years you know, above Bosnia with this stuff, and then they're like, how could you discriminate men? You know, it's really... And I'm like, okay, first of all, we're talking about Bosnia. Like we are still not even close to being equal, and not to mention that we can say that, okay, now we're at the point where everybody can participate. So for me, it was extremely clear that this is about women, because there was this thing called the first line of defense in Sarajevo during the war, and it was only men fighting in the war trenches defending Sarajevo, and it was called also like the red line of defense. And obviously we see what men did there. It was like horror. So what I wanted to do is to offer like an alternative army that was consisting only out of women, that also all of these women mostly have a relationship to the space through the men in their family. And it was a way for them to heal this trauma of also just being this woman waiting at home for, like my grandmother said, for him to come back from the war trenches. And that's why the first performance symbolically was really important, to be only women. And then from the second time on, when we have the yellow part, this is when I said everybody can participate. So we also had men. But even though I opened it to everybody, we only had 3 men. My grandpa, another grandpa, and a boy. So I don't know if men don't like planting calendula, but yeah, it's like...
Yeah. I doubt it. We don't want to essentialize. But I like the phrase you used, alternative army, because it's a form of mobilization. You mobilized an army, but towards exactly the opposite ends for what the stereotypical understanding of what mobilizing an army means. The gendered aspects of how we talk about war, how we understand war, is so deeply entrenched. Again, trenches, and that term is relevant here, that, and I'm only talking in terms of stereotypes, men aggressors, women victims. And of course, you're completely right to say that in the discourses after the war, Bosnian women have been depicted, for better or worse, and usually to essentializing ends that are problematic, as victims and victims only who are helpless, who have no agency whatsoever. So to then actually take that back and take that energy back and action back is something that's really powerful. What about the color coding? You mentioned color.
Yeah. And just to end with that, it's like, I don't believe in these stereotypical men-women divisions, just to make sure we all understand that. But I still have I have to say that it's really important to understand the context where we work in. So when I work in Austria and I work in transdisciplinary feminist research studies, obviously I'm not talking about men, women, and so on. It's like for me, it's like thousands of genders or none at all, doesn't matter. But in Bosnia, it's still strictly within stereotypes. So yeah, this is how we work. But the color situation, I work a lot with the color reds in a lot of my other performances and works as well, because this color is really, first of all, related to something also in the past that is not just war, but also these Yugoslavian times, and the color red, what it symbolized in the 80s or in the times when my mother and my grandmother were young, and how this was like a color of hope and unity and coming together as Balkans. There were no nations so whatsoever, and then this color transforming into this like red line of defense, symbolizing the blood that was spilled inside of the war trenches. And then again, like trying to reinterpret this red color as a new color that comes through resistance, or bringing back this aspect of resistance. Then also mentioning anti-fascist times in Yugoslavia, when women also had their own forum and community, and also red color is a very important color at that time. And yeah, so then the yellow one, it was more like, okay, now we're done with this. So now it's just the color of the plants, and the calendula is yellow. And from now on, everything was yellow. And also within my work, I finally finished this red thing now, probably. But I'm still wearing a red shirt, so I don't know.
Maybe you're trying to tell us something through that choice of color, which is, I mean, it's the colors are just incredibly, it's stunning to see that line. It's a performance in a way. It's very cinematic, and it's also a part of the environment. The way that it's choreographed, but also not staged, is beautiful. Both your grandmother and mother and participation in your interactions with them, just incredible. I want to just briefly talk, before I turn it over to the audience, about this notion of an organic monument. Monuments, studying monuments, talking about monuments is something that's a very fraught thing. Monuments stand for something. We erect things, again, another sort of phallic notion. Usually monuments are very phallic for reasons you can imagine, and static. But in more contemporary times, there has been a movement to mark mass traumatic experiences through more interactive counter monuments, really. Something that's going to not just invite us to passively observe or bear witness, but to interact, to actually reflect on what it means to bear witness. So this notion of an organic monument that you are introducing here, I find incredibly original because it also ties us to environment, to environmentalist topics, to regrowth, replanting, connecting us back to the nature. So tell me more, or tell us more about that.
Yeah, this is the whole core of my research at the moment as an artist. I work a lot with the topic of memory and monumentalization through monuments that most of the times, as we know, are, as you said, phallic and also made out of these like very strong materials. And the whole idea of monuments is that they should like resist time and stand there forever and ever. And once we build them, you know, that's it. And then we can just come there and be like, wow, it's a great monument. So what I wanted to say is like the complete opposite is like this fragility of memory and the fragility of a monument that is also created by women in relationship to the landscape, where also the choice of the plant is extremely important because calendula has this property that it regrows itself every year. So once you put it within the landscape, it already comes back next year, and then it takes agency of the landscape. So it spreads through the landscape and you cannot dictate where it goes. So only the first time in relationship with humans, we put it inside of the trenches. And then next year, it's already like moving with the wind and becoming really organically choosing where it goes. And another level I wanted to avoid is human language. So I really hate this, you know, like there's a big monument, a phallic monument, and then you have like engraved sentences about something. And then when I did this monument, the first question was, oh, will you put like an engraved sentence about something? And it's like, no, because I also work with the notion of language, like overcoming this anthropocentric language and allowing the plants or another species to take agency of what they want to say. And what I really like is that sometimes there's people coming to this landscape and they don't even know that it was war trenches, but they just see a garden and they start creating a new relationship with the space, like, oh, this is the space with medicinal plants. And I think this is very beautiful, and it should be about process and growth, and we should allow other species than humans to tell us a little bit more about how to remember and work for future.
That's really beautifully said, really. And mentioning anthropomorphic and working against that, we are not the only victims of our own man-made catastrophes, whether it's war, climate change. We need to think about other species, including the plants, and this rebirth. So that's really lovely. With that, I want to open it up for the audiences. We have our staff on standby to bring mics. If anyone wants to ask a question, raise your hand. Yes, right.
Thank you for a beautiful film. Just to follow on the maintenance of the monument, so you talk about how the calendula will be self-propagating over the years, but what do you see as your vision for human interaction and maintenance of the garden? You mentioned that other families have started planting, and really what do you see as the vision for this monument in 10 years, in 100 years, in 1,000 years? Where might it go?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, so now it's been like 3 years that the monument exists. So I've just flew in, like I was in Sarajevo doing the ritual for the 3rd time and coming to New York immediately. And what I see as the role of humans is just to like tune in with the landscape and offer it something where it's like to help it where it's struggling. So for example, in the 2nd year of the ritual, we had women bringing these, again, new plants into the landscape because the baby plants were still not so strong. And now in the 3rd year, we already had a bunch, like even under the snow, there were baby calendula plants growing. So all that we needed to do this year was remove a little bit the snow and also take out some weeds that were disturbing the baby plants. And I think also the role of humans will change every season. So we will be observing the monument and see how the plants are taking over, and also seeing how other species, like other plants, naturally start collaborating or growing within the garden. And I really want it to be completely an organic process. So if I'm not there, I feel like people are already doing something and taking over. Even in August last year, there were neighbors that it was 40 degrees outside. They were coming with backpacks full of water to put water in the garden. And I think that is the most important thing, because obviously our government or anything beyond the citizens in Bosnia is never going to do anything, and it has not been the case the last 30 years. So what I like is that we are creating this like alternative community and almost a little anarchist movement about nature and plants. But yeah, that's it.
Other questions? We have a hand here and then over there.
Hi, thanks again for the film. I don't have a question, I just have an observation. I went to Sarajevo last summer, and I was at the history museum where Aida Šehović's monument, traveling monument, was there, and I just want to say that it is really nice to see how these things are growing organically and how they're led by women, and how just beautiful all of these monuments are, and how much they mean for those of us that participate in them. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, Aida is a very good friend. She now moved to Bosnia, and we are collaborating a lot in trying to do this alternative monument movement. And thank you for sharing that.
While we move the mic over there, if I can just say, for those who may not be familiar with the Aida Šehović's work, the monument, Why Aren't You Here? Što te nema, on the anniversary of the Srebrenica genocide, the coffee making, and anyone who happens to pass by on any town square or city square where she's at any given year can add some coffee to from the little filter onto the little cup, and it continues to grow, and it's for the people who are not there to sip some coffee, which is a very Bosnian ritual. So in participatory, moving, and just healing, just like what you're doing. So it's exciting to hear that you're working talking about where this movement may take us next. Seems like a very female-driven initiative, which is incredible and lovely. And it also brings back this kind of daily rituals of planting, replanting, or just making coffee and having coffee together, which is lovely.
Yes, and it also organically emerged by Aida moving to Bosnia, and so.
I think we had a question.
As a former citizen of Sarajevo, I want to thank you for continuing this idea of alternative monuments. After my first encounter with that was with the glass monument built in Sarajevo to the slaughtered children of Sarajevo, which was remarkable and unique in my experience. But my question is following: how can your film be seen in other parts of the United States? Do you have any plans regarding that? And second, how can, let's say, diaspora reach out to you to support continuation of your project? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to know that there's also people who used to live in Sarajevo here, and that it brings some positive emotions. Regarding the question about the rest of the United States, actually, I have no idea. I'm just starting, like the movie was finished just a few months ago, so we just started this big process of sending applications to different festivals. We already presented it in November in like a closed screening at Yale School of Architecture, and probably at Syracuse University as well in New York in a few months. But regarding the rest, I think this is yet to come in the following next year and 2 years of its festival life. And regarding any support, you can reach out to me after the screening. I will gladly share my email address or any information regarding the project, because we are like completely self-financed. We even are buying our own seeds and stuff for digging, and it's basically, yeah, love-driven project, so any help is very welcome. Also because we have a very crazy idea to do like 32 kilometers of war trenches in the next 10 years, ideally. Everybody tells me this is too crazy, but I think it's not. And at the moment, I'm like making a website that will be interactive, where I try to envision this like 32 kilometers of the future war trenches garden, and possibly allow people to help us, yeah, somehow to do this in the future. Thank you.
Incredible. Keep at it. We're with you. Just let us know where to be, when to help with the planting. And of course, we will be, as a festival, very happy to continue to liaison between our filmmakers and anyone in the audience and broader film community, diasporic Bosnian audiences and beyond, to just make sure that the work is being seen, that the word is spread. That is something, this is why we're here. So that's very important for us. I think we have time for maybe one more question. Okay.
Seems like your grandma just has so much knowledge about medicinal plants. If that could be just like documented somewhere online, that would be great. I don't know if there's such thing in Bosnian community with all the medicinal herbs and whatnot, but I thought it was really cool how she had like about every single plant. Oh, this is good for wounds. This is for this. Sorry. It was just great. So just a comment more so.
Yeah, thank you for noticing that. Because this is like the essence of my whole growing up with. I grew up with my grandma in her garden, basically. This is why my garden, our grandma's garden, is taking such a role in the film. Because since I'm like 2 years old, she was always showing me plants and teaching me about them. So I can go now anywhere in Bosnian landscape and I can recognize every plant thanks to my grandma. And she's like a living archive. So I recorded a lot of videos and audio of her, and also I have like a book where I draw all the plants that she teaches me about. And I was suggesting her once to start a YouTube channel, but she was really shy. But maybe I can do it like in a sneaky way. But otherwise, I'm going to publish a book about this project very soon that will be called Performing Landscapes of Care. At the moment, I'm finishing the writing, so it's the book that talks about the social and ecological and like herbal wisdom from Slavic times, where you will be able to find a lot of plants. So yeah, you can keep an eye on that.
Cool. Thank you.
Welcome.
Beautiful. What a beautiful phrase, landscapes of care, in place of where there were a lot of landscapes of trauma and loss and sadness. Hopefully we can continue to plant care in place of those things. Give our regards to your family, your grandma, your mother, all the lovely people, and of course, whenever we can be apart. I want to just quickly ask you, what's next for you? You mentioned the book. Other projects you have in the books that you're working on? Give us a quick sneak peek so we know what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, this book is basically mapping out all the locations of trauma in the territory of Bosnia, so including very hard places such as mass graves and landmine fields and ex-landmine fields. And at the moment, I'm studying a lot this relationship between water and mass graves. So I'm studying rivers and lakes as places of trauma where some of them are still like containing bodies inside, but then we have this whole new ecosystem emerging 30 years after. So you have fishes and plants and dead bodies, and like I'm studying this like very dark but very interesting ecology that emerges out of mass graves. So this is one part of my work which is really related to Bosnia, and then the other part of my work I try to also go away a little bit from the war. So in Austria I'm working for this European Capital of Culture at the moment, and I'm recording a movie that's called Hippies and Hunters, and it's about like people from a Buddhist temple in a very Austrian village coming together with Austrian hunters and like creating a choir and singing together, like yodeling and doing Buddhist chants. So that's my other part of
That sounds great. We look forward to this. Thank you so much, Smirna. Please, let's give Smirna another round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And thank you all for being here.